When things go wrong as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to your favorite program, Let's Talk. I'm your favorite host, Malik, on your favorite channel, Huda TV, and I'm thinking about changing the name of this program to Real Talk because we're talking about really important subjects with really important guests. I'm very excited as well because this is the first episode of the all-new look Let's Talk. As you notice, we have new decor, new everything, new gadgets, but not a new host. I'm still your host. You guys, we want to talk. I know we're having a lot of fun usually on Let's Talk, but today we want to talk about a serious subject. I want to take this time to address the situation in Syria. As you know, there's been a lot of bloodshed and killing for the last year where the international community has stood by silently while there has been a lot of killing of innocent people, men, women, and children. So, of course, we want to address this serious issue. And remember to remind all of you, including myself, to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. So, to discuss this issue, we have brought a very prestigious guest. You have probably seen him on Al Jazeera channel before. He is a former ambassador of Egypt to Brazil, Australia, and as well as Jordan, as well as serving in Syria for many years in a diplomatic capacity. So we are pleased to host former Ambassador Nabil Badr. Thank you so much, Ambassador Nabil, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And of course, we have our studio audience, and mashallah, bismillah, a group of handsome young men. And in this episode, I want you guys to talk to me a little bit about, just tell me your name and where you're from if you're shy. But if you're not shy, tell me a little bit more what you're doing here, where do you live, and stuff like that. So go ahead and start for me. If we can start in the back corner there. Do you have the microphone? Oh, okay. You can go ahead and just hand it over there, and we can say, just say your name, where you're from, where you live, what you study.
Yes, my name is Abdullahi Muhammad Usman, and I'm actually from, I live in Sweden.
You live in Sweden?
Yeah.
What are you doing way down here in Cairo, actually? You came here for Let's Talk?
I'm here for studies, Arabic studies.
Oh, okay, you're here for Arabic,
Yes.
so thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Actually, thank you very much.
My name is Khalid. I'm coming from Bosnia. I finished my study here in Cairo, and right now I'm trying to make some business relation
Here in Egypt,
between
inshallah.
Bosnia and between
And I want to go to
Egypt.
Bosnia, Khalid. I want to go to Bosnia. I saw the pictures. It's very pretty. Take me some time with you, inshallah.
So you are welcome.
Thank you. Because I'm Greek. We are neighbors.
Yes, I know.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you so
You
much.
too
Thank you. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, brother.
My name is Ismir. I'm from Bosnia, and I study in faculty of Azhar.
Okay.
And this.
Thank you, Brother Smith. Thank you so much. I'm going to come to visit you too in Bosnia, inshallah. And who's this handsome young man with this nice-looking suit in the front row?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, brother. How are you?
My name is Hussam Eddin Allam. I'm a student at the Faculty of Sharia and Law English. It's the fourth year at Al-Azhar University.
Okay, we expect you in a couple of years after you graduate to be a guest on Let's Talk and talk about
Inshallah,
Sharia and
bi'idhnillah.
Islamic studies, inshallah.
Inshallah,
Thank you, brother, for coming. I appreciate
You're
it.
most welcome, brother.
And who's this handsome young man? Who's this handsome guy? We've got to get him married. Are you married yet?
Inshallah.
What's your name? Where are you from, brother?
My name is Yusuf. I'm from Canada.
Okay, you're from Canada. Okay.
I'm just right now just studying Arabic just in Cairo. Just nothing too much else.
Oh, that's great. So what do you mean something too much? Something to be proud of, Aki.
Yeah,
Very good.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Aki.
Assalamu alaikum. My
Alaikum
name is
salam.
Ahmed from the UK, studying Arabic.
Okay, you're in Egypt studying Arabic as well. Thank you guys for joining us for this special edition of Let's Talk. I appreciate it. And Ambassador,
Yeah.
let's talk about Syria. A lot of the people, including myself, were actually very surprised. I want to give the viewers a little bit of background information. Who is Bashar al-Assad and what is the Ba'ath Party? If we could start there, I think that would be very helpful.
All right, I'll try to start before Bashar al-Assad.
Okay.
Syria gained its independence, and there were lots of uprisings, coup d'etat,
Okay, as we say.
maintained by military people until we reached the year 1963,
Okay.
where the Ba'ath Party ruled the country. On background as well, the Ba'ath Party was the idea by some of his nationalists,
Pan-Arabs. we could say.
Pan-Arabists exactly,
Okay.
started, as a matter of fact, when Michel Aflaq, the philosopher of the party,
Ah.
Salah al-Bitar, had a term educationally in Europe, in Paris, and they were influenced partly by the pan-Arabic idea and partly by socialist ideas.
Okay.
And accordingly, they moved to Syria. And here the problem really starts, which has to be actually revised and analyzed in terms of developments in the whole area.
Because the Ba'ath Party, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is born in Iraq.
I beg pardon?
The Ba'ath Party itself was born in Iraq? Because we know Saddam Hussein himself was a Ba'ath
Oh
Party.
yeah, oh yeah. He was a Ba'ath Party.
Okay.
But in the terms of pan-Arabic party,
Okay.
the idea was to have a central command
Right.
of pan-Arabs that
Right.
belong to the party, whether they are from Iraq, from Jordan, from whatever,
Okay.
and to have the national command which runs the show in a certain specific country.
Okay.
And they had to coordinate. But in terms of the practice of the party, all over the years, since 1963 in Syria as a ruling party, that was more theoretical than anything else.
Okay.
Probably in Iraq it materialized
Right.
in the Ba'ath ruling Iraq, and then competition started between the two flanks of the
I
party,
see, right.
one in Syria and one in Iraq. The one in Syria claimed to be the leader, and the one in Iraq claimed to be the pioneer.
I see, right.
They even used Arabic terms to depict that image. To come back to Syria, because of the weakness of the political parties, the parties or the existing parties themselves had to have their depth actually in the armed forces.
Right.
So the Syrian party was largely highly politicized. And when the Ba'ath Party came, 63, it was backed by the Syrian party.
Okay.
And the whole situation continued throughout the era since 1963, all over, one ruling party, a complete hegemony over
Right.
the political life, no competition,
Right.
no transfer of authority, and still the party grew, but its real backbone was the military force.
Okay.
Under that context, Hafez al-Assad, the father of Bashar
father.
al-Assad, came into power 1970, late 70.
When you say came into power, he wasn't elected democratically, he just assumed power.
I'll tell you exactly because I lived that party, that part there. I was in Syria.
Oh, you actually
Yeah.
didn't say it at that time. Okay.
There was that conference of the Ba'ath Party,
Uh-huh.
and it was maintained in secrecy, which of course demonstrates one of the dilemmas of such parties.
Right, of course, yeah.
I mean, a political party ruling a country and has a conference, it has to be in the open. People should know about
Transparent,
it.
of course, right.
No, it was closed. Naturally, things leaked out.
Right.
But ultimately, it was all run internally in a very secretive way. So, people were not very happy with one clan or one faction of the Ba'ath Party, which was ruling at that time. They wanted change. And they encouraged Hafez al-Assad to take over. But the man was smart enough and he said, no, I would not like to have a coup d'etat from within the party ranks.
Itself, right.
So the first attempt failed. The year after that, things were too ripe, and the ruling faction just failed, still Ba'athist, and Hafez al-Assad came to power and became supreme commander, supreme leader, supreme everything.
In short, we could say dictator.
Naturally.
Okay, naturally, yeah, of course,
Naturally,
right.
especially with one party which is run by the whole thing.
Right, of course.
Which has
yeah.
no real influence in everything. And
right.
the lesson I might like to transmit at that juncture is democracy, well run, expressing people, loyalty going to the people, not to anything else, not to a cabinet, not to a
Or
regime.
one person like Hafez, this man Hafez,
Absolutely,
right.
not to a person. So to come back, Hafez al-Assad, he was smart, he was in full control.
Right.
He dominated Syria and naturally had also a great influence in the Lebanese political life, as
Right.
you know.
To the detriment of the Lebanese, I don't think the Lebanese like that.
No, they never liked
Right.
that. As a matter
Right.
of fact, they thought that was overdone and naturally turned against it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But ultimately, when he passed away, he had prepared the scene for the inheritance to go to his son. Now, reminiscing on that, Hafez al-Assad had another son who was, I think, a major in the army.
Okay.
He was a horseman.
Bashar's brother.
Bashar's brother.
Right.
He had an accident. He fell and he passed away.
He had an accident, or he was killed?
Or it was a car accident, probably.
Okay.
A car accident.
Okay.
A car accident. I'm sorry. And naturally, it was left to Bashar al-Assad to take over, and that happened. And at that time, I was in Cairo.
That was the 1990s, Ambassador? 1990s, I think?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. 1999.
Oh, we just 12 years, yeah, something like
Yeah,
12 years.
1999.
13 years, right.
I remember quite well, and that shows the dilemma, the tragedy, if you like,
Right,
of how such systems produce rulers.
right.
Now, there was a parliament, naturally. Well, on paper, well, you have a government.
On paper, we have a government, but not in action.
And you have a parliament. But that parliament, you would wonder, what is it doing exactly? Is it just giving the facade of a rule or a structure
Right,
of a regime? Or does it have a real function? Can it object?
right.
Can it deny? Can it? No. So, anyways, according to the Syrian constitution, the president had to be, I think, 40. Bashar al-Assad at that time, I think, was 35, 36.
So they just said, forget about
So
that.
they changed the constitution, that article in the constitution, and I saw it on TV. It was funny and it was tragic.
Yes.
It was funny because it was not convincing, and it was tragic because
we've came to this point.
You don't like such systems.
Yeah.
Anyways, Bashar al-Assad came to power. At first, he had some
plans for reform, Ambassador. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I remember when he first came,
certainly.
he said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, we're going to do reforms in this and that. Was that just talk, or was that sincere?
Well, maybe at the outset he had some real intent to do it.
Right.
But there's a natural product which comes with such systems. It is always surrounded by people that profit from the system itself.
Yeah, so they push back.
And naturally, it's not in their best interest
Right.
To have a democratic process.
Right, they were invested.
To bring other powers. They are in real influence within all the sensitive nerves of the country,
Right.
including the financial.
Right, of course.
And here we're talking about influence, about money, about continuity, about other interests. So, anyways, obviously Bashar al-Assad did not persist in following up what he said at first.
Of course.
Things became slack. But as you know, one of the things people or such systems never realize are two things in my convictions. Number one is the scene changes internally and regionally.
Right.
And probably they do not give that enough attention. Internally, because people boil, people won't change.
Right.
People are just sick of that
Right.
monotonous sort of...
They want change. They want, yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing is certain dimensions of the international system can never be ignored.
Right.
When people now talk about democracy or talk about human rights, and they are serious about it, and they are talking in good intent, naturally there are standards by which you can judge this or that.
Right.
So if a ruler, like when that happened in Egypt,
The revolution recently.
Yeah, thinks that, well, the army would stand by him or the police would support him, naturally that failed. Because they are, after all, citizens like everybody else.
Enough pressure and it will collapse.
Naturally, and everybody looked for that change, and that's what happened here. Now, in Syria, things were different for the following reason. I don't like talking about factions, religious or...
No, we can stick with the diplomatic side.
But as you know, Hafez al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad, belonged to the Alawite faction. And it was common knowledge, you could hear that from many people that, well, yes, they are Syrians, all right, but they have been given a special status within the army ranks. to secure
Their power.
the power and the system,
Right.
and to have sensitive possessions whereby they can dominate the scene.
And this is the result. But how did we get to this point?
And exactly, probably this is what we are seeing now.
Right. This is the results of that, because Syria is a Sunni Arab Muslim country overwhelmingly. Of course, there's other religions, of course, there, like Christians and other people, but overwhelmingly we can say it's an Arabic-speaking Sunni Arab country. So how did it get like this? I mean, how did one small clan take power and is willing to kill so many people?
That's a very smart question.
We don't know the answer. We need to find
I'll try to give you the answer. And the answer was in the book, in one of the books written by one of the high commissioners, French high commissioners, that ran the show, governed Syria before independence.
Okay.
And a Syrian friend, when I was there, gave me that. Of course, there was no thinking about that these changes, because we're talking about 20 years or more.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But story, according to the High Commissioner, goes as follows. The Alawites are living in isolated areas in the north. They suffer from isolation. They are very poor. Their chances of realizing themselves and progressing in their personal lives is limited.
I see.
They do not have a freeway whereby they can get to the higher ranks in civil life.
Right.
So let us take these people to the army.
Right.
Educate them, make them officers.
Make them the elite and control.
Exactly. Make them, with time, they will produce a military elite.
Right.
And that military elite will, number one, realize his ambitions, and number two, can help us. And the outcome was very clear.
The outcome was very clear. Now I'm going to stop you. We have to go to a quick break. But in the next segment, I want to learn what the outcome was and if the outcome is reversible. And you guys in the audience, stay tuned. In the next segment, I want you guys to sing the theme song to Let's Talk. You guys at home, stay tuned for more of the new look. Let's Talk.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose whom He wills subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy, for His messengership, for the revelation to be revealed. This is not for the human beings to make that decision. If a person would turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, truthfully, asking for forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to forgive. We have as Muslims a duty, and that is to recite the book of Allah, to ponder over the verses, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to act according to the Quran. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything, but who would this mercy will be for? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent to all mankind. So the ummah, or the people of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are all mankind since the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam till the day of judgment. Why waste our life without getting to know every verse in the Quran, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us?
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to your favorite program, Let's Talk, on your favorite channel, Huda TV. I'm very happy we have a new look. This is the first episode of Let's Talk with our all new set, one of the first episodes I should say, and we are continuing in our two-part series about the tragedy, and I should say massacre in Syria. As you guys probably know, for the last year, the people of Syria have been killed at the hands of this regime in Syria. I believe the UN has recently reported between 7,500 to 10,000 deaths of civilians, mothers, fathers, babies. Of course, I watched The Straight Path recently with Brother Osama Shami, and he said, when we talk about plus or minus 2,000, we're not talking about dollars or dinar or rial or money. We're talking about human life. So, of course, this is a huge tragedy that we want to keep in mind and support them with our prayers in any way we can. So, in that regard, we put together a little report for you highlighting what is going on in Syria. And after we watch the report, we'll be right back with Ambassador Nabil Badr, so stay tuned. let's talk about the Syrian massacre. For the last year, the so-called leaders of the free world, the champions of peace in the Middle East, the protectors of freedom, democracy, and human rights, have sat by silently while the Syrian people have been massacred at the hands of the barbaric, despotic, totalitarian, and categorically non-Muslim regime of Bashar al-Assad. The roar of automatic weapons in Damascus, Aleppo, and Homs is drowned out by the deafening silence resonating from Washington, London, and Paris. Many world leaders continue to expose their hypocrisy by standing on the Syrian sidelines after launching massive military interventions in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and other parts of the Muslim world. The Arab League proved once again that its absence is far much better than the disgraceful silence and disability which appears to be a phenomenon. With the full support of the butchers in Beijing, Tehran, and Moscow, al-Assad has laid siege to peaceful protesters, killing women and children in their homes in front of fathers and husbands. The likes of this regime's sheer brutality and cruelty has not been seen in modern history. Furthermore, the dark sectarian nature of this massacre cannot be avoided. Al-Assad and his gang of criminals, murderers, rapists, and thugs are categorically disbelievers. It is well known that they belong to the Nusaris or Alawi religion that rejects the validity of prayer, fasting, and Hajj. Even more alarming is that they commemorate the so-called Qudus, a celebration of the supposed divine attributes of Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, as well as other Christian saints, in addition to their celebration of the so-called Trinity of Ali, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Salman al-Faris. Furthermore, the Israeli Minister of Foreign Defense, Amos Gilad, was quoted on February 2nd, 2012, on Israeli radio as saying that the survival of the al-Assad regime is an essential component to the existence of Israel itself. Considering these facts, it is our obligation as Muslims to support our dear brothers and sisters in Syria and keep them in our hearts, minds, and supplications. It is the emphatic responsibility of every Muslim to support the Muslim people of Syria in any and every way possible. It is imperative that every Muslim use their influence, wealth, and positions to support the Muslim people of Syria in these difficult times. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Let's Talk. We're talking about Syria. I hope you enjoyed that little report we put together for you, and I hope it touched your heart and encourage you and inspire you to do all that we can for the good people of Syria there who are under intense oppression. We are enjoying the safety and security of our homes and our studios right now, enjoying Let's Talk, so we want to keep them in our minds because they don't have that same blessing right now. So, Ambassador, before the break in the report, we were talking about how did we get to a place where an overwhelmingly monoethnic and religious community, Syria, overwhelmingly Sunni Arab Muslim, although there's other people there as well, but overwhelmingly we could say 80 or 90%. How did we get to this point where a small group of people now have all the power and are willing to kill all the other people? And is this reversible? And why does the international community not get involved?
Right. It's okay.
You have 1 hour.
At least. I'll take the first part of the question, which is how a small minority runs the whole show.
Okay.
Well, it is controlling the sensitive areas of the country.
Okay.
That's why. But naturally, the ruling party or the system itself does not lack intelligence to know that he needs everybody and he needs the participation of a country, and the majority of that country is Sunni and all of that.
Right.
That system, as you know, and the Ba'ath in general, is very secular.
Exactly. Excellent point.
It is very secular. That's number one. Number two, naturally, it is looking at that not exactly from a religious angle, but from the point of controlling and continuity of the system.
I see.
So they maintain holding the sensitive possessions,
right,
controlling, if you like, the security of the country in favor of the ruling party and Bashar al-Assad and
right,
his family goes on. But you have the Sunnis as well. Now, that's an open invitation if it persists to a serious division.
Big time sectarian divide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
يعني,
If it
I
goes
hope,
like this.
I hope sincerely that Syria has suffered from enough bloodshed up to this moment, and that things do not turn worse. Now, I know the impression of the Sunnis. The Sunnis certainly do not like the system itself.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And of course, their animosity and hatred will be directed against those that help in controlling it.
Right.
These clans,
Right.
as we spoke. And I'm sure some of these clans, the wiser part of it, know that they are a part of Syria.
Right.
And that is not in the best interest
In the
of
long
itself,
run, right.
in the long run, to antagonize everybody for the favor of someone that is profiteering, ruling, dominating
Yeah, right.
at the expense of everybody.
So having said that, do you think it's reversible? We can get out of this?
It certainly is reversible, but the cost, I'm afraid, will
Be high.
will be high.
That's
Because you have certain scenarios.
right.
A scenario of a divided Syria.
We're already divided enough here in the Middle East. We don't need more.
Exactly. A scenario of internal conflict or a mini civil war, if you like,
Right.
which will not be based on factionalism or on Sunnis, Alawis, and all of that, but on for the regime and against it, whatever the components are.
Right. Okay. It's not as simple as we could say. Right.
And three, of course, the danger, the third scenario, of an international intervention
In a regional war,
in a regional war, which is going to be
involve Iran.
very damaging and very serious.
And I want to get to the next big question about Iran and how they're involved. But before I get into that topic and open up that can of worms, I want to go to the studio audience. I know we had a brother from Sweden, in Canada, Brother Yusuf, I believe you said you're from Canada. And looking from your Western perspective, does it look strange to you to see all this fighting and all this division? Because, you know, I'm from the United States as well, and although there's many different people and ethnic groups and diversity in those countries, you never hear of Canada falling into a civil war, or you never hear of Sweden having a war with Denmark, you know, its neighbors. I mean, does it feel strange to you to see the situation in the Middle East? Can you relate to it, I mean?
I mean, from a Western standpoint, it's just that I think people that live in the West, maybe they basically have a feeling that I guess they wait 4 years and things could change because they elected the person, but maybe in the Middle East and stuff like that, I mean, the frustration comes because, I mean, maybe a lot of them didn't even want that person.
Yeah.
They don't know when the person's going to leave.
Right.
And that's the way I think a lot of people look at it.
That's the point. We don't know how to change power in the Middle East. We just have a revolution or a war, but we don't know how to change the power from hand to hand very easily. Inshallah, we'll learn how to do that. But do you have a question as well? I'm sorry. Is from Egypt?
Yes, actually, I have many questions.
Go ahead,
in
go
mind.
take your time. Go right ahead.
With the fall of all diplomatic efforts, out of your experience, Mr. Ambassador, what is the best way out of this crisis?
Of the existing situation.
Yes, and
Right.
is there any better scenarios? I mean, could be a fourth scenario which includes the an Arab initiative, for example, or an Arab, a united Arab army that can get involved and put an end to this bloodshed of our fellow Syrians.
Thank you, brother, for your question. You know, as you know, Ambassador, the Arab League has been disgracefully not there. So what can we do?
Arab League could not work it out because naturally they were not helped by the Syrian government in any way. And to demonstrate things, as much as it seems that the whole system is obstinate, it is in fact fighting with its back against the wall.
Right.
There's very little margin whereby it can move.
The Arab League.
It does not want to admit defeat. That's number one. Number two, it's not looking for a serious change.
The regime, you mean? I'm sorry, the Syrian regime or the Arab
Syrian
League?
regime.
Oh, okay, go ahead, yeah. Okay.
And the problem of these regimes is the following. Now Bashar al-Assad says that, well, I want reform, I'm serious in doing reform, and you'll find that Russian
And
diplomacy
China.
in many ways is talking about that, well, the regime is in control of things are getting calmer. In other words, let's give it a chance. And number three,
Right.
let us not lay all the pressure on the regime. Let us put some of that pressure on the other side as well.
Right, but they have their own interests, Ambassador, isn't that right?
They have.
Yeah, they're just playing the game
I'm just
as well.
analyzing and
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Naturally. So when you get to this point, the dilemma of these regimes is they are not only willing to change seriously, but they are not willing to change the head itself.
Right.
And for practical reasons, people have, the Syrians that is, have lost confidence. It is like talking about how could you maintain Bashar al-Assad, who was the head of a dictatorship,
Right.
and confide in him that he will look for a real reform that will limit his power
Yeah.
and limit his followers' powers, fortunes, and so on.
Right.
The answer is no. So as long as this gap of confidence is there, there will be no solution. What can happen, probably at the first trial as well, with a lot of diplomatic effort, lot of diplomatic exercise as well, pressure, boycotts,
Right.
any sort of political steps, is to convince everybody that we need a space whereby the regime itself retreats and the other party gives the space. And here, goodwill intervention
Right.
can look for a grace period that is limited, whereby it can suggest reorganizing the whole thing. Now, to answer that thing, is that possible? In my reading now, I don't think this is possible. I think Bashar al-Assad is ready to fight
To the death.
to the death and to the last resource he has, because it's his final battle.
Right.
He might be treated as a war criminal himself.
Right. Or killed like Saddam Hussein and Muammar
Exactly,
Gaddafi.
or be killed. So he's going to fight and fight and fight. So how are people going to react? The other scenario is hopefully that the bulk of the Syrian forces
Will defect.
defects, changes possessions,
Right.
including the Alawite component,
As well.
which is ultimately Syrian as well.
Right.
And here that will be probably the most
The best
practical way.
we can do this. Right. Excellent point. And Ambassador, actually, we just had some news here hot from the AP. It says the Syria Deputy Oil Minister resigns top position. He says he announced his defection in a video on YouTube. He is the highest level political figure to abandon the government of President Bashar al-Assad since the uprising erupted a year ago. So I think that goes to what you're saying. All we can hope for, I guess, is Syrian defections from the army.
Changing possessions
Changing
from
position.
inside. See, the Syrians themselves as a nation, they're good people. They're not bloody people.
Of course.
And they would rather look for a change that takes place seriously. And let me tell you something. They are, in lots of ways, pragmatic.
Right.
Great merchants. I think they are one of the best in the world, if not to say the best. So they certainly are smart enough to know where their interest lies.
Right.
But you're pulling down the whole system, which has maintained and governed the country for so many decades, and now it is dissolving.
Right.
So the more you carry on pressure for that dissolution to take place,
Right.
changing parts, hopefully
What happens?
that might finalize and minimize, hopefully, the bloodshed which is taking place.
But thank you very much, Ambassador. What about Turkey and Iran? Turkey is supposed to be this emerging new power, but they're obviously not wielding any influence in their neighbor. And what about Iran? Why are they so heavily invested in this Sunni Arab country? Why?
Iran has its ambitions, regional. First circle is the Gulf states.
Yeah, right.
And two, to run it well, they have to maintain common interests.
Right.
In an axis which can extend as much as they want. I've been personally to Iran 3 times in lots of capacities, in the Conference of Islamic States, or as the head of the Egyptian team in the Dialogue Among Cultures.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I've met very interesting people. They are intelligent, they are educated, civilized.
Right.
And they have an inherent sense of pride.
In their civilization, of course,
In the
right? They're very proud about
like
that, right?
The thing you find here.
Right, everywhere.
I mean, it's They especially demonstrate that when they're talking to foreign people.
They love
Probably we're not used to that here very much, but
Ambassador, they love their Persian culture, don't they? And I want to talk more about this right after a little short break. You guys stay tuned for more Let's Talk. We'll be right back.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose whom He wills subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy, for His messengership, for the revelation to be revealed. This is not for the human beings to make that decision. If a person would turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, truthfully, asking for forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to forgive. We have as Muslims a duty, and that is to recite the book of Allah, to ponder over the verses, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to act according to the Quran. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything, but who would this mercy will be for? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent to all mankind. So the ummah, or the people of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are all mankind since the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam till the day of judgment. Why waste our life without getting to know every verse in the Quran, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us?
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Let's Talk. We're talking about Syria, and I'm sitting and speaking with Ambassador Nabil Badr, the former Egyptian ambassador to Brazil, Australia, and Jordan. And we're talking about the influence of Iran in Syria, which is a complicated subject we can do 10 episodes on. But just briefly, you were talking about your trip to Iran, several trips. And the Iranian people, of course, are very proud of their Persian culture and their history. And you said you had a good experience there. But however, why are they playing in Syria and how?
well, I mean, there are two different systems. As a matter of fact, Syria is very secular.
That's a funny thing.
Secular. This is, well, as you know,
Islamic Republic of Iran.
Islamic Republic.
And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they fought a war against the Ba'ath Party for 8 years against the Iraqis, but now they support the Ba'ath Party in Syria, so I can't get my mind around that.
Well, I mean, there were common interests. Iran would get out of its isolation.
Right.
Would try to harmonize its policies.
Right.
In say, Lebanon, in other parts with the cooperation of Syria.
Right.
Would jointly help each other.
Don't be a pariah.
Meeting needs, yeah, exactly. Creating an axis against other countries that are not
competitors in the world market, we could say.
Well, so friendly, if you like, to their system. But it does not go beyond that. The dilemma, I think, in Iran is that they know they are supporting a system which is not like very unpopular, a dictatorship.
Right.
And this is not useful to them.
Right.
It's really harmful. But they can't let things go down that way, so they'll try to persist for some time. They are playing it at that juncture, offering advices.
Right.
Telling to Bashar to speak to his people.
Right, which is a joke, right? Considering what we saw in Iran.
Advising him to, talk to them, at the same time saying, well, there are certain amendments that should take place, etc. But does not go beyond common interest that might be maintained as long as the system is.
Right.
But certainly has been considerably weakened, I think, because of these developments in the last month.
Let's talk about possible foreign intervention in Syria, and I mean in the Libya style or the Iraq style. I want to ask the studio audience, what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about a Western intervention in Syria? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? That, like we saw in Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan. What do you think of that? I'm sure people are discussing that.
Of course, it's a possible option on the table, but of course we as Muslims and as Arabs we are totally against it.
Right.
And actually, it's something shameful that we Arabs and we are Muslims we are waiting for the NATO or whatsoever, and we can't mind our own business while our
we can't manage our affairs. Yeah.
So from a practical point of view, and as speaking of the people on the street, I think this option is not desirable.
Not desirable.
But sometimes sometimes يعني,
maybe necessary.
maybe it's necessary.
But brother
because
Hussein,
this is the only solution available.
Do you think it's a bit hypocritical of us as Muslims? We complain about colonialism, we complain about foreign intervention, and they're taking over Muslim countries, they're bombing Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia. And Ambassador, what do you think of this as well? But in the end, when we need them, we say, where's the UN? Where's the United States? Why don't they help us? But at the same time, we're saying, oh, they are colonists, they are not Muslims, they are bombing us, they are invading us. So which one is it? What do you think, Ambassador?
I think this is a good question, but I think basically, even apart from being Muslims,
right,
not to disregard it, but I'm taking very professionally.
Okay.
It's very serious, to be a serious mistake, to indulge into a military intervention in Syria.
It would be a big mistake, okay.
Absolutely.
But they did it in Libya.
Number one, yes, I know that, of course. But Libya is different from Syria, that's number one. And there was a certain readiness to accept it. There was not that division as in the case in Syria.
Oh, Syria.
First, it's going to be counterproductive. It's not going to be accepted even by the public opinion.
Right.
That is even against the regime. It's going to threaten the Syrian unity up to an extent which could bring about serious division.
Right.
And the whole region is in danger by that division. And four, there would be, I understand the Syrians, there would be a reaction based on nationalistic values which would work against that.
Right.
Not far from Syria is Iraq, and the experiment in Iraq was
a disaster.
Disaster.
I believe Abu Ghraib prison, the Abu Ghraib prison thing, was the worst calamity in American history that really brought down the credibility of the United States, because that was a disaster. And I remember, I believe one of the foreign ministers of Iraq said recently when the Americans left Iraq, he said the American soldiers and the U.S. Army, they showed no respect to the Iraqi people. So I'm sure, I mean, we don't want to repeat that in Syria.
They made lots of mistakes. They did not show respect. The whole country collapsed. It is threatened by division
now. They fueled sectarian violence, it looks like.
And it has generated and regenerated, as you know, violence.
Yeah.
And at the same time, dismantled the whole country.
Right.
To a very serious mistake. And, well, I mean, it has caused more problems to Iraq, I think, than anything
sure.
in their modern history.
Right.
So, no, that should not. What should happen is, I think, the persistence of political pressure,
right,
more patience, concentrating now on stopping the bloodshed on practical terms that might be escalated, by the way,
right,
in the coming through diplomatic or political
pressure,
measures,
right,
short of invading Syria.
Right, like sanctions.
Now they are
like
sanctions, yeah. Now they are talking about free zone areas. Now this has to be studied actually more carefully. But this is the sort of thing which is being speculated.
Right.
But at the end, with the sensitivity of the Syrian, and the Syrian population is, I might dare to say, is politically better trained and probably better educated through history and through lots of factors than the Libyan possession, for instance, or other possessions as well.
We could say more culturally developed.
They might react contrary to that.
Right.
So I would suggest maintaining pressure, escalating pressure, trying to take off from the struggle sensitive areas, considering the safety of the civilians. That's the way to do it.
Of course.
Right. And naturally, part of that should be directed internationally to everybody, including Russians, Chinese, and because of the Security Council. I mean, the veto.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we complain about, like, the United States, Great Britain, France on the Security Council not helping, but then we have Russia and Beijing openly supporting it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a tragedy in itself.
This is a problem in the international system, as a matter of fact.
Right. It just doesn't work.
I mean, the lots of work which has been taking place recently, or in the last year, that is, about how to have a more democratic United Nations is a real challenge.
Because they are holding the power in their hand, as the 5 countries, I believe.
Now, one of the solutions which were suggested, this is outside the subject, but that brings it about just shortly, is to give more power to the General Assembly.
Right.
Not everybody likes this idea.
Of course, the people holding the power, right,
Yeah.
that's right. Do you think that will ever happen? Perhaps in the future, because we can't keep having 5 countries.
Probably, because the amount of, the problem is, this is the world order now.
Right.
And there's no substitute it. I mean, you cannot drop that unless there's a substitute.
Right, right.
But if that failure continues and the world develops, you never know what's going to happen next. So we have to create a larger area whereby a real vote, apart from that veto, can take effect.
Yeah, of course.
But you cannot get confronted all the way with that veto.
All the time.
Exactly, at situations which cannot afford that.
Of course, excellent point. But Hosam, I wanted to ask you, do you see, in your opinion, do you ever see a united, peaceful Middle East in the future, or do you think we'll always be suffering from these sorts of this sort of violence and divisions?
I do see a very bright image for the Arab world.
That's all I hope so too. What makes you optimistic?
For a variety of reasons. You know, what happened in Egypt, and what happened in Libya, and what is now on way in Jordan and
Yemen,
in Yemen, yes. I think there are many positive hints and signatures that something new and something very bright will eventually come, inshallah, and all the Muslim youth will materialize the dream of a united nation, inshallah, a united Islamic nation, inshallah.
This is the old, inshallah. This is the old dream of Jamal Abdel Nasser, by the way.
I'll
never realized.
I'll tell something. This part of the world has needed drastically reform for a long time. Reason is, all right, I don't want to really get out of that.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Now, if I take the history of Egypt,
for example,
we had a parliament in 1866. There was a house, there was a legislature.
There was actually a parliament, okay.
Yeah. Before that, in the early 19th century, yes, the people was modernizing.
Right.
There was more contact with the world.
Right.
Evolution was taking place. But that was frustrated
by
lots of factors. The ruling system at that time, local, and by the domination of the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
Okay. And then came the British invasion.
Right.
In 18 well, at the end of the 18th something, 19th century, until 1923, that's on paper.
Yeah.
1919, there was a revolution, so they don't stayed for centuries.
Right.
But certainly our will was not free to dominate. In that sense, I think if the democratic process had grown, it would have been much better. If reform, I call it religious reform.
Right.
Started with Muhammad Abdo. And there were many schools.
So we need some more dialogue, we can say.
We need a lot of dialogue on that. We need a lot of dialogue. Not that religion changes.
Right.
But the way religion expresses itself.
Over time, in different places, different
times.
Exactly.
The way it lays the stress.
Right.
On number one, more than on number whatever.
Whatever, right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's pretty important because that forms a lot of the internal psychological
of
national structure.
Of course.
And I think we are entitled here. I claim, don't take it that as talking partially. Now, I think this country, in spite of its problems, Egypt that is, one of the very strong elements in it is the human resources, if well used in every sense. By human resources, I'm not speaking about the how many millions.
Right.
No, I'm speaking about the, let me say, political, scientific, educational infrastructure. It is there.
Right.
It is, in certain cases, a land of contrasts.
Yeah, it needs to be used, that's all, properly, right.
But, because on the other hand, you'll find lots of problems which are completely contrary to that.
Of course, yeah.
But if you use that properly, that's a great asset.
Yeah, of course.
It has never been used.
We need to utilize it, inshallah.
Yeah, exactly.
In the future. I hope so as well.
It was handicapped, it was controlled.
Retarded by these events. Ambassador, I'd like to do an episode with you in the future about democracy in Islam, and we can bring Dr. Muhammad Salah, and I think that would be a very interesting discussion to have.
Okay.
Your diplomatic perspective and viewpoint, and Dr. Muhammad Salah can bring the Islamic perspective. We can make a nice episode if you are available, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Inshallah.
You guys, thank you in the studio audience. Thank you for joining us. I didn't include you guys enough. I apologize. We had a very special guest. I want to pick his brain and get all the information we can. So I don't know if you guys are flying back to Canada or Bosnia or the UK or Sweden, but we hope to join you. You guys join us for another episode of Let's Talk, inshallah, in the future. Thank you very much. And you guys at home, I hope you enjoyed this special edition of Let's Talk addressing the Syrian situation. I certainly hope that it inspires you and motivates you to keep them in your thoughts and prayers and do what we can to help our Muslim brothers everywhere around the world. So until next time, I leave you in the care of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're treading seems all uphill, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're treading seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the dips are high, and you want to smile but have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk.